Before there was Olympic gold, before NBC cameras, before endorsement deals, before little girls saw women flying down an ice track 80 miles per hour and thought, hey, I could do that, there were nine women. Nine. No Olympic event, no funding pipeline, no guaranteed future. Just belief. Women's bobsled wasn't in the Winter Olympics. It won't debut until 2002. But long before the world validated the sport, these women were already pushing sleds, already crashing, already bruised, already fighting for track time at 4 a.m. They were told it's not ready, it's not marketable, it's not safe, it's not necessary. But what they heard was prove it. This episode isn't about sliding ice down. It's about building a lane where one doesn't exist. It's all about strength before sponsorship, sacrifice before spotlight, courage before cameras. Today, I am honored to welcome Alexandra, Allred, Jill Baker Linder, Cristina Chris Dolan, Nessie Lang Houghton, Laurie Millett, Liz Parr-Smestad, Michelle Powe, Elena Primerano Wise, and Chrissy Spiezio. These women who pushed the ice before the world was watching. And today, we tell the story. Ladies, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you
Wow,
for
that was
having us.
awesome.
That was a great, yeah. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. So the first question is, let's start at the beginning. None of you grew up saying I wanted to be a bobsledder when I grew up. So how did all this happen in your minds?
Well, I'll start. This is Alex, and if it helps you periodically, I can direct someone to answer a question because there's a lot of us staring at you right now.
Right,
um,
exactly.
yeah, for me, I was watching ESPN. I just had a baby, and I was watching ESPN, and I saw the men's bobsled and thought, "This is so cool." And I waited for the women, and there were no women, so I had to do a little bit of research. And when I found out that women had been banned from the sport, I honestly, like you just said, bobsled was never on my radar. I knew nothing about the sport, but I knew that that was intolerable to me. And so I just started writing letters and complaining and and maybe pushed us in that direction. But that was my start. And I can, for myself, I can just say that then I got a phone call from a man named Howard Lowry, who would turn out to be a really great guy in our program. And basically what he said to me was, we're going to have the first ever women's push competition in Lake Placid, New York. Are you going to come? Big mouth. And I said, yeah, I'll be there. And that was it. But I know Liz has a different version of how she got into it.
Yeah, so I saw an ad in the regular Sunday newspaper, and it was just a little paragraph like that, and it said, "Hey, we're going to start a women's bobsled team. You want to join?" And then it gave a phone number, and kind of weird seeing that. So I had just saved that for 2 weeks, thinking, no, this isn't right. Nobody does this type of thing. And I finally called, and they wanted an athletic resume, and from there they asked me and several others to come to the very first training camp in February. So that's how I started.
And then I know Jill was actually a competitive skier.
Mm.
And tell us, Jill, how did you segue into bobsled?
Well, as you'll hear everyone or some others tell their story. We all came from different sports or some the same, but in bobsledding, we usually started later. So at the time when we were competing, I think it was 18 was the minimum age you could start bobsledding. So most of the athletes came from some sort of sport that they did in a university, or they had, or in some capacity they were doing some other sport before they started bobsledding. Um, in my case, I actually wanted to try luge, and they said I was 16 at the time, and they said I was too old to start luge. So because they start luge at a much younger age. They don't want to invest in an older kid. And so right when I had asked that, they said, we're going to host a women's bobsled camp in February. Would you like to come to that? And to me, I had seen the sport during the Olympics when I was younger, and I thought it would be so much fun and said, yes, I'd love to come out. So that's kind of how I got introduced into it, just by wanting to do luge, and then they sort of like transitioned me into asking for bobsled instead. So,
Laurie, did you read an ad in a paper too?
I did.
Okay.
Do you remember Heidi Kimco?
Yeah.
Okay, it was an ad in the local newspaper out of Glens Falls. And it was a picture of her sitting in a bobsled saying that she attended the first camp, and they were looking to start a program, and they were going to hold another training camp. And I was like, adrenaline junkie. I'm 2 hours from Lake Placid. I went into my boss's office with the paper in my hand saying, Dennis, I'm going to do this. I'm trying out for the bobsled team. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And like, a couple months later, it happened.
Then
That's how I got started.
Another teammate, Nancy Lang, she was unable to be here, but hers is funny because she was in Florida watching Cool Runnings, the movie Cool Runnings, with her mom.
Classic.
And yeah, right. And then she looked at her mom and she said, I got to go do this. And so she actually drove up to Lake Placid just with the little bit of money she had and found a place to live and started sliding with the men. She was actually the first one of the strictly bobsledders, females, to be there. But Cris Dolan was there as a skeleton athlete. Cris?
Yes. So I was on vacation with my family, and my parents, was on vacation in St. Moritz with my family skiing, and my parents were like, "Oh, you have to go to the bobsled track," and I was like, "Ugh," typical rolling the eyes, like, "Okay, I'll go." And when I got to the top of the track, now keep in mind, you didn't walk down the track. I just saw a bunch of guys having like hot cocoa, and it was like they'd call the names and then they'd like prance over and they'd put their sled down and then they'd go down. And I was like, this is like a sport. And I thought to myself, it's like, why can't women do it? It looks pretty easy. And of course at the time I was young and cocky. And so I thought to myself, I'll do it. And so the person who was writing like the UK European newsletter at the time said to me, well, you should just sign up. And he told me to call the federation. And it's the next thing I know, I went up to Lake Placid. And of course, in Lake Placid, I started walking up the track and realized, oh, okay, it's a little different than like the hot cocoa in St. Moritz with the sun. And it's like freezing cold out. There was like no sun out. It was like, bitter cold. And I'm watching these sleds come down and I'm thinking to myself, okay. But at that time, they didn't let women do bobsled. It was skeleton that was going to be the sport that they were going to allow women to participate in. And so anyway, I got on the sled and pretended that it was non-eventful and I wasn't scared. But, in your youth, you can sometimes, behave boldly because your pride gets in the way and you're like, okay, I'm not going to let anybody know that I'm scared. And beside the fact that there weren't any other women there. And I think the men were looking for me to say, I'm not doing it. And of course, I just had too much pride and couldn't do that.
Then Michelle is actually my sister. And so, you can tell him, Michelle, how you decided to just throw all medical concerns aside. And
yeah, I had major neck surgery in December of 93. So when Alex went to that first camp, I was in a neck brace, actually the first two camps. And then I started going to visit her and was training with her. And then, 6-7 months after neck surgery, I thought, sure, this would be fun, much to the horror of my doctors and my parents, who did make Alex and I swear to never be in the same bobsled. So I went to the tryout camp and then I made it along with the rest of these guys and loved it. went down the first time I went down the sled in Calgary for the driving school. It was a blast, and I was hooked.
And going in after that first season, then going into the second season, but it's really all kind of the same year. Our last two came in, Chrissy, saving the best for the last, Chrissy and Elena. So you guys can duke it out. Say what you got to say.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'll go. My story, the beginning sounds like a dirty joke, kind of. So I was out at a bar one night, and Laurie approached me. We had kind of hung out with the same crowd of people, friends, and she approached me and told me about you were going for your second season, I believe, because it was 95. And she said she was going back to Lake Placid, bobsledding. They were looking for athletic women to join the team. And I had a background in track and field through high school and college. And being in the Olympics was always a dream of mine. So I said, sure, why not? And I went with Laurie and made the team, and the rest is history. Met these great people.
Yeah, I similar to Chrissy in terms of having a background with track and field. I actually found out about women's bobsledding. There's some track athletes at Rutgers where I attended that said, "Hey, get this! The bobsled team's going to be in New Jersey, and they're going to be testing people out, and you get to meet some of the members of the bobsled team." And I went there. I thought we were just going for a friendly competition. And it was like a recruitment tool for the bobsled team. And that's when I found out they were starting a women's bobsled team, but there wasn't really, anything in the Olympics yet. And I tried out there and went to Lake Placid about a month later and made the team. And when I first saw the bobsled come down, I was terrified. When I first got on the bobsled, I was like, what am I doing? And then it kind of grew on me. You start to think about, Olympic dreams, even though it wasn't yet Olympic. I guess we all had the same idea of one day it's going to be, and we're going to be, the people that hopefully make it happen. And from there, just fell in love with the sport and fell in love with the competition of it all.
Awesome story, Zed. He's awesome story. So the next question I have for you is, can you describe the first time you guys actually were in a bobsled? Was it like a, holy-ish moment? Like, I'm actually doing that in a bobsled, or you guys were terrified being in the bobsled? I just want to know how your mind was the first time in a bobsled.
I don't know about you guys, but I loved it. But I was surprised. We've never even talked about this before. Is it just me, or were you guys surprised at the pressure that you felt on your back when because they tell you to get it. You go in, you put your head down, hunker down low, and then you're going to get through it. And it was so surprising for me, the sound of how loud it is inside the bobsled. I think that's why, like, we were just talking about this before. Travis Kelce apparently did it, and Colin Jost Michelle, you said Jason Kelce,
yeah.
And they did it, and they were talking about how terrified they were, and it was so scary, and they thought they were going to die because you're in this little tin can, and it sounds so loud, everything.
Very loud.
And so that was a surprise, but just the pressure of it on my back, just shoving you down. That you guys say, but that was surprising to me.
Well, the first time I was ever in a bobsled, I mean, I never went down in a bobsled before actually driving a bobsled. So that was pretty scary to know that you were in charge and someone else's life was in your hands as well. But I went to driving school in Calgary, and I went to driving school thinking I was going to be a brake person and just sit in the back and hunker down. And the coach was like, no, you have the mentality of a driver, you're going to drive. And my first run down I was nervous getting in the sled, so I forgot to put my goggles down. So the whole way, the first time you drive, you start from the half mile, but still you're going pretty fast. I couldn't see because the wind, my eyes were just watering the whole way down, but made it down. And yeah, it was scary, but it was also, you get to the bottom and you're like, holy cow, that was awesome. So that was my
Elena
first.
loved it too.
I'm so
No.
happy that I wasn't the only one who forgot to put her visor down. I thought it was just me who forgot to put the visor down. It makes me
I
happy.
had the goggles and I didn't even like
Yeah.
they stayed on the top of my helmet.
Well, I was like Chrissy. The first time I went down I was driving. Laurie was behind me, bless her little heart, and in Calgary driving school. And I had been that was the visor, and I was starting to hyperventilate a little bit, and it was fogging up. And I had said to Laurie, "I can't see; it's all foggy." And the track worker came up and cracked it a little bit, and it cleared. And I was like, "Oh, thank God!" And he didn't say, "Well, remember when you start to put it back down." And I didn't know. I had a lot on my mind. I had a lot of mind to think about. So I didn't, but I also hadn't tightened my chin strap enough. So my visor had come up. And so like Chrissy, I couldn't see anything. It was just blowing. But by the time we entered one of the bigger curves, my helmet had been going up and up and so the chin part of my helmet was right here. So we did the second half of the track. I was completely blind. And when we got down, I thought, well, hell, I can do that blind. I can do this. That was a blast. Did I tell you, Laurie, that I was blind? Did you know?
No, I had no idea.
Some things are better left unsaid.
I was just too busy swearing. I said a lot of holy shits. I felt like I was trapped inside like an ice machine in the refrigerator. You know, when you turn it on to crush some ice, it was like,
yeah.
And you know, my eyes were closed, and I was just holding on for dear life.
Rating on this podcast, Kenny. Are we PG-13 or we are?
Oh, you guys can say whatever you want. It's fine.
Bleep it up. Bleep, 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 bleep.
I do think it's important too to say, so your listeners won't think we're complete morons, is that so literally, like, can we think of another team that's starting up? It's an official team, right? It's got this new team, but we didn't have coaches. We weren't given coaches. So the bits of information that we got would literally be from, to Michelle's point, track workers, coaches from other countries, a lot of other countries, the Jamaican bobsled team who had a weird obsession with Chrissy's hair. I don't know what that was about, but
it used to be really long.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I remember the first trip going to the track. Well, first to what Alex said, you know, we didn't really have coaches. Once I qualified and they said, well, go try it out, go to Lake Placid. I said, okay, wear helmet or, you know, get a helmet. Okay. Wear football pads. I was like, why? Okay. And then, you know, so, and then I watched the sled come past. I was like, whoa. Okay. So I was kind of excited. When I say I was terrified at first, I was excited. I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. You know, when you keep convincing, you're going to the top and you're like, oh, this is going to be great. I can't wait to get in there. Now I'm going down with a random driver who I don't even know who it is. I don't know if they can actually make it down the track. And I learned the track that the sled before me crashed and they announced it over the loudspeaker. And I didn't even know that was a possibility. And so here I went from excited, like, can't wait to go down to, I actually turned to the person next to me. I said, what happened? And they said, oh, the sled crashed. I said, that happens? So now you go from I'm excited to, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm getting in the sled. I don't even know I don't think I knew the person's name that was driving me down. So I think that just added to the terror of the whole experience, you know, of just being shocked at the time and then being bounced around on the sled and coming down with bruises.
Yeah, I guess I was just so shocked at all the unknowns.
Yes.
I mean, we knew absolutely nothing.
No.
And then they're like, yeah, get in a sled. It'll be great. And just like Elena's saying, you know, you watch it go and you're thinking, hey, that looks pretty cool. But yeah, and like Alex was saying, the G-forces are just pressing you down. That was unbelievable to me. And I love roller coasters. I love doing stuff like that. But yeah, it was scary. And then I drove a couple of times and I know the people in back of me were like, oh my God, get me out of Liz's sled. So I was not a driver. I became a brake person, but yeah, lots and lots of unknowns.
Yeah, I remember when I first took up the sport, they had recruited some sort of NFL people to, try out to be sort of, the push in the, backs, the second person on the sled. And, and I was just starting out, and all of a sudden this person from Car and Driver showed up, and he decides that I should be in the back of his sled, and immediately say, well, did you walk the track? And he's like, well, I don't have to walk the track. I drive cars all the time. And then I was like, okay, well, if you're not walking the track, then I'm not getting in your sled. And so anyway, so he's kind of a little mad at me. And then they give me this this guy who is, a professional athlete, and we're going down from the half mile, and I guess he was scared to have a woman driver. I don't know why. And as we're getting into that, finish curve, which was a pretty dramatic curve on the old track, he would pull on the brakes, and I couldn't steer anymore, because basically when you pull on the brakes, you're lifting the runners up and you're digging the teeth in. And so the sled would always go out of control and hit the lip. And thank God that, we didn't get hurt. But he would do this every time, but I couldn't tell, because, I'm driving. So I didn't know what was going on. And the track director was really upset. So, he came out, and when he realized what this person was doing, he basically kicked him out, and he was put on a plane and sent back to wherever he came from. And so I got teased a lot, including from the guy who wrote the article from Car and Driver, who said that he wrote in the article that I earned my nickname Crash for my less than optimal line down the bobsled track, which wasn't really true. And then I couldn't shake that. So every time I'd show up at the track, the announcer, I think his name was Stan, he would say, "Oh, it's Crash." And meanwhile, I'd be thinking, but I didn't really earn that name on that particular time. So
Not fair.
not fair.
Fair.
But
I think it's great though that you stood up and said, "I'm not going with you then," because I think the rest of us, we were just trying to prove so much that we wanted to. And yeah, do you remember that one time, that one year, Alex, you and I were in Lake Placid, and they were having a men's race, and you and I were just braking for all these guys like who didn't have a brake person, and we're like, okay, just jumping in the back of every sled.
I know.
Well, I had been around the track a lot, and being in Skeleton, to know enough. I mean, that the older track, as you know, was not as forgiving as maybe some of the other tracks. And so I was a bit nervous about the possibility of what could happen if somebody, didn't walk the track. And it was just unheard of that you would ever get in a sled and, try to go fast without walking the track. It just seemed so absurd to me at that point, having been competing in Skeleton for some time, that I just couldn't do it. And so anyway, so
Yeah, and meanwhile, the rest of us are like, okay.
Yeah. You need a body?
Yeah.
And then
And
you
now we
chill.
all have all kinds of surgeries.
Okay, the next question I have for you guys is, did your family think you were crazy taking on this endeavor?
I think it's a collective yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Really?
Why do you want to do this?
I
My
think
family never did that.
Oh,
They always
really?
thought, oh, this is Liz. She does stupid, crazy stuff. Just let her go.
nobody in my family even wanted to watch. But it was interesting, because after I competed in the World Championship for Skeleton in Koenigsee, I got invited by Swiss TV, and they flew me to Switzerland for this interview. And I remember, my mother never came to any of the competitions because she thought it was too scary. But when I had this interview, she was on the plane. I think she actually arrived before I did, because she thought, oh, well, this is fun. I just go to the TV studio and hang out. Tell them what it's like to be the
TV
mother of an
studio.
athlete. And I'm thinking, but Mom, you were never there. It was just me. So anyway, funny.
Sorry, the next question I have for you guys is, let's see, was there already a sense you were building something historic during your time in the Olympics?
well, it was a grisly fight. And so we really try to focus on the positive. That's really the message that we want to send. But the reality is the beginning was tough, because each woman here can tell you multiple stories of how often we were kind of put down or asked, what are you trying to prove? Why are you here? Go home. There'll never be women's bobsled in your lifetime. And I don't want to jump your number of questions, but she's been very, very quiet. And so I really feel that Jill should take this question because, and I'll spoiler alert, she was the baby of our team, but she is the one who went on to make it to the Olympic Games and won the first ever world's gold medal for women in bobsled. Let's just all clap just for a moment. Let's just yay. Yeah. So Jill, would you like to just speak to, did you know in the beginning that you were on the path to change history in sports?
No, I was a teenager. Like my mind was not thinking about history. It was just, this is fun. I want to do it. I don't understand why women aren't doing it. Like it just doesn't, I think women before us, like even my mom's generation and my grandmother's, like, and it goes beyond, they had, it's like, it's progressed, and it still needs to progress, but they didn't have access to so many sports that I did in high school. So for me, I got to play soccer, I got to play basketball, and there were women's teams in my high school. So I was very fortunate. So for me, it didn't make sense. I'm like, well, why isn't there women bobsledders? It's just a sport. Like I don't understand, So my 17-year-old brain was not in the I'm gonna make history right now. It was more of I want to go to the games and I want to win a medal. So it was just sort of like a day-to-day thing. I enjoyed it. I had so much fun. It really was pretty simple at the beginning. And then it started to, and just to give you an idea of, I wanted to play in the NFL and I thought that was normal. I mean, I was so young and I'm like, I'm gonna be Joe Montana.
Jill on the gridiron.
I did. Joe Montana was like my idol and Jerry Rice. And I'm like, oh, I can do that. I think I'll be like Jerry Rice and I'll play for the 49ers. And then I got a little bit older and I was like, oh, I don't think I'm quite that fast. So I'm like, I could be a quarterback. And then I got a little older and understood like, ooh, that looks like they're bigger and they get hit hard. And then as I got older, I was like, maybe I could be a kicker.
So I don't think I could be a kicker.
I just didn't have that restriction in my own brain, I guess, going into this.
And
so
what was older to you, Jill?
Well, no, young. I'm talking like 3 years old, 4 years old. I was going to be it. And then it got to be like 5, 6, and then 7, 8. And then kind of in that transition when you become a teenager, you're like, I don't know. I think I'm a little delusional. And I think I just had that mentality of, I just wanted to have fun. I loved athletics. And so it just kind of kept me going in the sport. And it wasn't until, we got to our first international competition. It's like, oh, we're not allowed to call it a World Cup. We're not allowed to, just sort of like all these, we can't. We show up first. Elena and I would show up for training, and the men, not all the men, there were some men that were very helpful, but some of them there would say, you can't slide today. And they just could say that. And then we drug our sled up, and Elena drives from New Jersey all the way to Lake Placid, and it's like, no, you can't slide today. And then we just took it. We're like, okay. And then we showed up the next day. So I had the energy to do it back then. And it was just day to day hearing those things. And then we just have to, well, okay, we'll try tomorrow, or and Alex was a big part of, well, all of us were a big part of it in our own way. Like someone had to show up at the track. If we got a chance to go compete, someone had to represent to keep it going, right? To show that we can do this. So people were behind the scenes, like writing help me out here, the bylaws. So yeah, all of us kind of played a part in being a presence in some way or another. So yeah.
Great story. So let's talk about the grind years. There's been a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, a lot of blood, um, a lot of bruises, given you guys go down the mountain on numerous occasions. But the question I'm trying to ask you guys is, what kept you going during that time?
A dream.
Each other.
Yeah, each other, a dream. You're right. You're right. We were all, first of all, we all got along so well. I think the friendships, the camaraderies that we built for sure. And then I think we all had a common dream. We brought to the table something different. Each of us brought something different, but it combined perfectly to, I think for a lot of us, we actually saw that that dream could happen. And that was for this sport to make it to the Olympics. Um, and despite all of the setbacks and all the hurdles, I think that we had to go through and get over in order to make it work. I think we all have agreed that it was just no, this is going to happen. We just kept our perseverance was just let's keep going, and you're told no. I think we're all a little stubborn too.
Yeah.
We're told no. It's like, well, why not? I need to prove to myself I can't do it. You're not going to tell me that I can't do it. Like I'm the one who decides that this can or can't be done. And, why do we keep going? I think we all kept the dream alive. And when it did finally come through, it was kind of a sweet thing that we got to see unravel.
True.
Yeah, and I think like Elena said, every time we were told no in whatever scenario it was, we just kept coming back. And I think, like she said, the hope, and that's what kept us going. We didn't just back down, and we just kept going forward with it as best we could.
Was there ever a moment you guys almost quit?
Yeah, we're all gonna start laughing because there were so many. So it would be well, somebody else tell the story of the bake sale. Little stuff like that would just, what's that, death by 1,000 cuts? That's how it felt in the beginning. And do you guys remember, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah.
Because we had no funding and no coaches and no uniforms, no nothing. And when we asked about some of those things, we were told to have a bake sale
To raise money.
Have a bake
and sell bumper stickers.
and sell, which we did.
Yeah, we did.
I have one of those.
But I think too, like even more than the funding is a big issue. It's still today a challenge for a lot of athletes. It was the fact that they didn't want us. Oh, I shouldn't say not all. Some of them were, supportive, but there were a lot that just didn't want us there. So they're not actually helping, say, like direct us and be like, hey, this is what we can do for you. It's like, well, if you don't, I guess, they didn't want us to be in the sport. It was very much
no
a
belief in us.
dominated sport. And so, yeah, to have women kind of want to now be involved, for a lot of them, it wasn't something they wanted. So you're not kind of going against, instead of, yeah, okay, maybe we have to find our funding and work just like any other maybe athlete, who does that. However, we weren't an Olympic sport. We had people who didn't want us there. So you're just kind of fighting even more, more of that.
And I think this was a good group of women because we were thrown a whole lot of stuff, from, competing overseas to us having to go to Walmart and Target and finding some Olympic sweatshirt to wear for our uniform, to getting laundry detergent for a podium award. We've really come a long way to a gold medalist on our team. And laundry detergent. So I think if we gave up, it just wouldn't have sat right. I mean, how could we let people and the environment be so non-conducive to a positive outcome? And that's what we got, was a positive outcome through all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I've told this before, but the way that I met Cris Dolan really was because she was doing skeleton. We're up at the top of the mountain and we're all taking our turns acting as a brake for somebody. And Cris walked, because Cris was transitioning into bobsled with us, but she was still doing the skeleton. And she walks up to me and she says, "Hey, as soon as I go out and I go down the mountain, will you put my name back on the board?" And there was a board and there was kind of a system that when a slider went down, then as soon as that slider went down, somebody else would write their name up. So then when they came back up, they could still stay in the rotation. But Cris found out that because she was a woman, nobody would ever write her name down when she was going down. And I just remember thinking, what do you mean? It took me a beat to understand what she was talking about. And yeah. And then after that, sometimes, hell, I'd write Chris's name in just wherever I could. But it kind of, gives you an idea of, there was a lot of stuff stacked against us for sure. And you guys are right. This was the perfect group, Liz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the journey was a lot of fun as well. So it wasn't really just about, constantly in the headwinds trying to make things work. I mean, I think because of this unique group of people, we always managed to have some level of fun and some laughs, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yes, definitely.
I think the years we were together, there was probably more laughs and more fun than after it got sanctioned for the games, and it started to get more competitive. Ironically, you would think that that's that's where it's more glorified, but I just think all of us in for the common goal just really bonded us, and we had a blast.
So let's get into the resistance and respect part of the interview. So as you already know, back then, women's bobsledding was basically non-existent at the time. How much pushback do you guys face during that time? Did you guys face any federation politics, gender stereotypes, internet skepticism? You guys face any of that during your time there?
Yes to everything.
My first skeleton race, I flew to Europe, and there were a number of women who had flown to Europe to compete, and then all of a sudden they decided, okay, well, we're not going to have a women's race, and we're all like, okay, well, we just flew all the way over here. And so there were a number of us that actually got to compete in the world. It was a world championship, and so we obviously competed with the men, and so they gave us prizes within how we placed within within the men's race. But it was took a couple of days to resolve as to whether or not they would let us compete. And the whole time you're thinking, I flew all the way over here and I don't know if I'm competing. What is this, right? And I think that there were a lot of moments that ended up somewhat like that in a lot of the different competitions that people participated in terms of, you just put yourself out there and show up, and then not knowing whether or not you have ice time. One of the things that the men would say with respect to getting women to the Olympics was that when it came to the weeks coming up to the Olympics, it was hard to get enough ice time for, bobsled and luge. And so if they introduced women's bobsled and then skeleton into the next Olympics, that would mean that there would be less runs for everybody in the team. Now, keep in mind, that was a time where they didn't care about brain health, and they didn't limit everybody to 2 runs a day. You could just, as many runs as you could possibly take was the rule. So there were a lot of reasons why maybe they weren't moving as quickly as possible. But in the end, it, obviously all worked out. And, Jillian, of course, Jill has, obviously shown everybody that, it can be done.
Yeah. You talk about bias. Jill and I, when we were in for a race in France, it was the first time we were actually sliding over there. Crashing is a part of the sport in general. Unfortunately, it happens a little more often than we want. But when the women's team was there for the first time, and France had opened up the track to us for the first time, when a women's sled crashed, now mind you, it was a pretty bad crash. They banned the women from ever being on there, basically looking at each other saying, see, women can't drive. See, the women can't drive. And thinking to myself, oh, so no men have ever crashed on this, on this track before. I don't understand. But I think, that's where people were looking for us to not be successful, and kind of looking at that as it's because they were women, as opposed to the fact that it's part of the
Inexperienced.
sport. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no experience. Like, it was the first year or two that the women were driving. I guarantee if you looked at the men that were driving for a year or two, you'd find a lot more crashes. But it was because we were women at the time.
Well, and I think, as opportunities arose, we took them. And I remember one time Michelle and I were like, yeah, we're going to Germany. And there was a lot of pushback for us not to go. And because of that, we didn't have a sled to even use when we got over there. We didn't have sliding time. We didn't even have a place to stay. And luckily, some of the other country coaches, they helped out quite a bit, and we did get to race. But, there's a lot of pushback with a lot of things.
As always, as always. What was the moment you earned respect?
Never.
At least you were honest.
Well, I think that's a big question, because some of the men, some of the people involved in Bob, we slowly earned respect. It's not one moment. I still think there's probably people out there that don't want women. But so I think there's it was kind of like slowly we did with certain people earn respect. And I don't think until it became Olympic did it show necessarily overall. As soon as something's Olympic, it's like, oh, okay, here's the funding, here's, like then you get it going much quicker. But we had some athletes that we knew, like on the men's team, or coaches that they saw we could do it, and maybe earned respect earlier on with them than we did, someone else. So that's a tough one to just nail down like one time that.
Yeah, and I think each person can answer that in a different way. I remember one year during racing season, I stayed back in Lake Placid to get more ice time because, like Elena was saying, there were often crashes because we were inexperienced. So I stayed back just to be able to drive and get the experience. And after a period of time, some of the women were off competing, or some had to leave for families. So I was there by myself, and it got to a point where a lot of the men were just stepping up and jumping into the back of my sled. And to me, that is when I felt like they respected me and my driving.
It's huge.
Yeah, one summer, Jill and I went to Lake Placid to train. It was right after our first year sliding together. And when we got there, we had all intentions of just bettering ourselves as athletes and going into the next season. And we were told by the director of the Olympic Training Center that we weren't allowed to stay there unless we proved ourselves. And I mean, we weren't an Olympic sport yet, so I kind of understood the underlying tones of it. But, we were there as women bobsledders. And Jill, how long was it that we had to like train before that? I felt that like we earned a little bit of respect because we were there to do the right thing, and we trained every day, and they looked at us and said, okay, you can have a room.
Yeah, it was a while. And like actually our Olympic coach, Bill Tavares, he let us stay on his couch as long as we needed, which was amazing, right? Because we didn't have a place to stay or the funding really. And so I think everyone has kind of a different story and who started respecting them at different times. So.
But I look at you, Jill, as earning that respect for winning that first gold world Olympic medal, and you did better than all the men for decades.
Well,
you paved it.
But it was funny because I talked to some of the guys on the team at the time, because they won. So Brian Scheimer it was his fifth Olympics in Salt Lake City, and this was his last chance to win a medal. And his team, we went first and won a gold, and we had gotten to know them over the years, and so it was they watched us win, and the fact that they were happy, you know, they were happy for me and for me and Vanetta for winning. Like genuinely, it felt really good, and they sort of you get energy from watching others compete and doing well, or even if they have, you see someone at the games and it's like heartache, you still have this like energy that you want to go out and perform and do your best. And so yeah, they went out and won a bronze medal, and that was a big moment also for the men's team. So yeah, like that was exciting for me as well because we got to know them over the years, and it was a big deal for them. And so
So
How is that?
let's. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You can
No, go
continue.
ahead. I was just gonna just remind that there had been a 50-year drought of the US not having a gold. So Jill's goal was a big one, a big.
Big.
So let's talk about team dynamics. So as you already know, team dynamics is a very important part in being a part of the team. Did you guys ever have conflict with your teammates during your time at the Olympics, or everything was just hunky dory?
The neat thing about all of us, and Elena said this, is that we were so busy trying to get recognition and get the things that a national team needs and deserves to become competitive. We were so busy working that we were a very cohesive unit. There were no arguments. We never had any fights, no arguments, no issues, because as Elena said earlier, so we were so busy working toward that common goal that we just every day I just learned, and I think I'm speaking for everybody, we just learned to love each other and respect each other, more and more and more as that was happening. The irony is, and nobody knows this better than I think really Elena and Chrissy and Jill, who are here because they were there for the later years, and Liz, is that when things started to move in our direction, like 1997, 1998, then the sadness of the politics of sports came in. And that doesn't have anything to do with us being male or female. That's all, because that's when other people were coming in and they wanted to represent the athletes, and they had sports agents. But before all of that noise came in and it was just us trying to get to the second point, it was, am I right? I mean,
Yeah,
those were
we
the
were
golden
fighting for
years.
each other, not against each
Yeah.
other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even within competition, we genuinely wanted everyone to succeed. It wasn't like, with teams, you get competition within the team. And I don't think there was any of that. I think we genuinely just wanted everyone to succeed in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? I'm sorry. The next question I have for you guys is, how did you build chemistry?
Common goal, but I think it was because sometimes it was so awful, it was funny. I mean, we wound up laughing so much over stuff because it was just so ridiculous that I think that, yeah, I think that we bonded just over the crazy. There was so much negativity around us that we all just sort of clung to each other.
Yeah.
And there are
And
some
you guys
stories that are
remember?
so. Wait, what?
What's that?
I was just going to say, there's so many stories that are so funny that we can't repeat here.
But
And we spent a lot of time together.
yeah, that's what I was gonna kind of say
Yeah.
is, do you guys remember, this is before, I mean, there was a little computer lab and people would kind of fight to try. I don't even know if there was at the time, actually. There was like maybe not even a computer lab, but we didn't have phones. We didn't have on our day
Yeah.
off, we'd go for breakfast, sit in the cafeteria, talk and laugh.
For
And all
hours.
of a sudden, you look and see they're bringing out lunch, and you're like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna eat lunch.
And we'd sit
after
there through
lunch,
all 3 meals.
we'd sit there, and someone would say, we should really get up. And then we'd just come right back for dinner. Like, it doesn't happen very often. We spent so much time
Yeah.
Like to think of that now, to spend that much time just talking and
Yeah.
laughing and being around each other in that way with no distractions. It's just
Yeah.
sort
Remember
of
when you
organic.
called home, you had to use the payphone. Remember the
Yeah.
payphone outside the cafeteria?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to use a payphone. Can you imagine that now? No cell phones, no laptops. Yeah, it was just,
With your
it was
calling
us.
cards.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But even though that was like a long time ago, I mean, I remember being the Olympic Training Center when the whole Nancy Kerrigan and
Yeah.
Tanya
Yeah.
Harding thing,
Wow.
and everybody was in the cafeteria watching off of the
Yeah.
same screen. And there was something very cohesive about like seeing everybody's reactions at the same time. But kind of to the point that we were making before, when you think about like any milestone, like whether you're graduating from school or you're working at a company and then company gets acquired or sold, or like, whatever the milestone is, the end point, like even graduation, people are crying because they're all going off in, their separate ways. And so when you look back, it's always the journey that's the important part, not that last day. I mean, obviously Jill's gold medal is amazing. But I'm just saying that it's always the journey. And if you don't have that, it's almost like it kind of takes away from the whole experience. So, I think it's important to note that the journey is just as important as the end point.
So true. So true. So let's talk about the 2002 Olympics. February 2002, Salt Lake City, women's bobsled debuts. So the question I have for you guys is, what was that moment like when you first stepped foot onto the bobsled, I would say arena? That's what it's called.
Track.
Yeah,
Track, yeah.
track, yeah. What was that moment like when you first step on the track?
Jill.
Jill?
Well, I mean, that's different for everyone. I wasn't overly confident. I mean, a lot of my competition years were either without a coach or a coach for one day. So it was like really about, I learned a lot on my own or asking for help or, until we got coaches leading up to that. So I was never on top ever. I mean, I was maybe in the top 8 consistently, but never winning. And so going into the games a year or two before I started to do better, but still I was not an overly confident slider except for in Salt Lake for whatever reason. This was it for me. Like, I was there. Getting there was the hardest part, and now I was there. So stepping onto the ice, athletes typically, now I don't know what their routine is, but we would do a track walk. And what it does is, yes, one, to make sure that you're, as a driver, you're seeing the track, making sure if you see something that shouldn't be there, or, you let the track workers know, but also to get in the right mindset kind of before competition, just to kind of a mental preparation. And as soon as I started walking the track, and all of a sudden this like newfound confidence came to me, and I was like, I am gonna win. Like I just sort of felt it. So, um, yeah, I mean, there's nothing, I had a terrible sleep the night before. I couldn't sleep. It was, I was like, then I was worried because I'm not getting enough sleep, and just all the mental games that you play and superstitions that come into play right before. But yeah, I was prepared, I guess. I did everything I could. And I think that's why I went into it confident, is because I felt I had done like training, everything I could to do my best. There's nothing more I could have done. So that's kind of how you want to.
There's not. You got gold.
Yeah.
You have a picture of soundtrack going through your head. Favorite song.
No, I was pretty nervous. Nervous, but happy. Yeah.
Kind of another nod to the camaraderie is, and I've said this before, is there's the other side to the Olympics, right? Is then there's the athletes that we didn't hear about because they should have been there, but for whatever reasons they're not there, right? And Elena was really on track she was a top contender. And I always say this, Elena, I have no idea if this is totally accurate, but it's like it seemed like at the 12th hour, right?
Yeah.
She tears her Achilles and she's out. It's just over. So, as Jill's stepping out to do her thing without any choice, Elena's dream is taken away from her. And so, and I always point that out because I don't ever want anyone to forget. And everyone's been talking about the journey, and the journey to the Olympics is pretty amazing. So, here she is, and now she's on the couch, and I'm setting it up for you, Elena, because you got to tell. So you're sitting on the couch and you're watching.
And I'm watching Jill. I was a little bit depressed over over my injury. Of course, real happy because Jill's my very best friend, and I was very excited for her. But I had chosen to kind of go home and get my life together because it was really hard to watch sliding at that time, knowing that I could have been there. And because of the delay of the broadcasting of the Olympics, I happened to be watching Jill win the gold. As we said, it wasn't like today. I could have YouTubed it or figured it out a little bit earlier. I was literally watching it. And because of the delay of the broadcasting, she had already gotten the medal, gone through whatever. And my phone rings as I'm watching her, and it's Jill on the phone who says to me, after I'm all excited and choked up, she said, "We did it. We did it." So, it kind of, I guess all the emotions that I had went into just pure happiness and a feeling of like, wow, like she did it. And we were all kind of a part of it in some way. Excuse me.
She's still choked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is.
Getting a tissue.
So let's talk about legacy and advice. So the question I have you guys is, what do you want young girls to understand about your generation and your experiences in the Olympics?
Liz, you jump on this one because you promoted so much for over the years.
Wow. There is so much to say. I did want to add just what Elena was saying is, Jill not only won that gold medal, but we all felt such pride for her and such pride for her moving this program from nothing to what it was in 2002 and then now what it is now. So I'm getting a little choked up there because it's a big meaning. What we all did, not only us, but Jill, for really paving that way in 2002. So, and we give you a lot of credit, Jill, and you give us credit back. So it's a reciprocal thing. I guess I just love sharing my Olympic journey, and I also carried the Olympic torch in 2002. So I like to bring that out and have as many people as possible take a picture with it and just share my experience. And I think that, people are so wowed about it, but, you always have to have a dream. And that dream is, it can come full circle or you just let it go. And luckily for us, nobody let it go, especially Jill.
For Michelle, because Michelle's a high school teacher, and she's got a lot of kids that I don't necessarily have a really bright future, and she is constantly trying to get her kids to understand that you do hard things, and then things can happen. But Michelle, how do you talk to your students about rising up?
Okay, well, all of my students have a bright future. What are you talking about?
I meant the circumstances under which they're living.
Yeah, they've overcome a lot, my students, and that's why I like to talk to them about what we overcame, because nothing should get in your way without your own permission, right? You may face obstacles, you may face roadblocks, but you find a way to go around them. You don't stop. You don't let it deter you. And I was thinking, I have a quote on my wall that's Eleanor Roosevelt that says, "No one can make you feel inferior without your permission." And I think that's the same thing, is that nobody can tell you you can't achieve your dream. We had plenty of people try to tell us that. And I think, like Chrissy or somebody said, we were stubborn because we knew that it could happen and it should happen. And so we weren't going to walk away. So I think in terms of history, maybe it was lucky that they had 9 incredibly stubborn women who were like, "Oh, it's going to happen." But that's, that is what I share with my kiddos, is that they face things or they have an injury and it's like, okay, but what are you going to do now? So find another way. That just because the dream doesn't die. You just find another way. You find another road. Is that interesting?
Wow, that's beautiful. That's good. That's actually really good. So the final segment, we reached the final segment. It's called rapid fire reflections. So you ladies gonna give me one more answers as I give you a question. Are you guys ready?
Ready?
Yeah.
One by one, or are we doing
We do everything.
I'm nervous all of a sudden.
It's like a test.
Can I phone a friend?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You're allowed to. Okay, the first question is, ice is
fast?
Cold.
Fast.
Burns.
Slippery.
Unforgiving.
Painful.
Soothing.
courage is
Amount.
Hard. Required.
Necessary.
Yeah,
Strength.
it's necessary.
legacy is
Doing your best.
Meaningful.
Determination.
if I could relive one run, it would be
Jill's gold medal.
I would relive Jill's gold.
Yeah. Watch it every day.
my 1994 or 2002 self would say,
Ooh.
Oh.
Don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
You go, girl.
Is the cafeteria open?
How late does it stay open till?
Where are the cookies?
Oh yeah.
well, ladies, that is all the questions I have for you guys today. This has been such a blast and listening to your stories, and you guys made a lot of history, and I am so honored to be interviewing you guys today, and God bless you guys.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you so much.
So let me
That's
just do
great.
history loves medals, but history should also love builders. Because before you can win gold, you have to build the starting line. Before you can stand on the podium, you have to earn the right to compete. These women did that. They trained without guarantees, competed without validations, believed without proof. And because they did, in 2002, little girls watched women fly down ice and thought, that's possible. That's impact. To Alex, to Jill, to Cris, to Nancy, to Laurie, to Liz, Michelle, Elena, and Chrissy, thank you for pushing the ice before the world was watching. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kitty,
was
that was
great.
beautiful.
That was so
Golly.
beautiful.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. Well, this has been Kenny the Sports Guys podcast. You can find this episode on my social media sites at Kenny_sports on Twitter, Instagram at Kenny Sports Guy 1, and TikTok at Kenny Sports Podcast, and whatever streaming platforms are sold. Until the next episode, see ya, and I hope you stay safe and healthy. All right, ladies, that's it.
Ah.